The old letter sat on Hei-yun's desk for 3 days before she found the courage to open it. Rain tapped softly against her apartment window as she finally broke the seal of the thick cream envelope. Inside, she found a key and a note that would change her life forever. Dear Hei-yun, the letter began in her grandmother's neat handwriting. The Moon Valley Manor is now yours. Hei-yun had to read those words several times. Moon Valley Manor was her grandmother's beautiful Victorian mansion that sat on the edge of town. As a child, Hei-yun had spent many happy summers there, but she hadn't visited in years. The last time she saw the house was at her grandmother's funeral 6 months ago. The next morning, Hei-yun drove through the light rain to see her inheritance. The iron gates creaked as she pushed them open. The garden, once neat and lovely, had grown wild with tall grass and autumn flowers. The path to the front door was still there, though leaves covered most of it. The mansion stood tall and proud against the gray sky. Its red brick walls were dark with rain, and ivy climbed up to the second floor. Hei-yun counted the windows, 12 on the front, each one like a watchful eye. The wraparound porch still held the old rocking chairs where her grandmother used to sit and tell stories. Using the key from the letter, Hei-yun opened the heavy front door. The hinges made a soft sound, and the smell of old wood and dusty furniture filled her nose. It was strange how the house felt both familiar and unknown at the same time. In the grand entrance hall, sheets covered the furniture like ghosts. Hei-yun's footsteps echoed on the wooden floor as she walked around. Everything was exactly as she remembered, just older and quieter. The grand staircase still curved up to the second floor, and the crystal chandelier still hung from the ceiling, though it was now covered in cobwebs. In the library, Hei-yun found something interesting. An old wooden box sat on her grandmother's desk, filled with yellowed papers. As she looked through them, her eyes grew wide. They were invitations, dated October 1889, for a Halloween party that was supposed to happen at Moon Valley Manor. The invitations were beautiful, with black cats and pumpkins drawn in golden ink. They invited guests to a night of mystery and celebration at the manor. But according to a newspaper clipping in the box, the party never happened. A big storm had hit the town that night, and everyone had to stay home. Hei-yun sat in her grandmother's old chair, listening to the rain outside. The house felt lonely, like it was waiting for something, or someone. She remembered how her grandmother used to say that houses had feelings too, and that Moon Valley Manor was special. Looking around the library, Hei-yun noticed small things she had missed before. There were fresh flowers in a vase on a side table, even though no one had lived here for months. The room was dusty, but not as dusty as it should have been. And was that the smell of fresh bread coming from the kitchen? "Hello," she called out. Her voice bounced off the walls, but no one answered. As the afternoon light grew dim, Hei-yun made a decision. She would not sell the house as some people had suggested. Instead, she would bring Moon Valley Manor back to life. And maybe, just maybe, she would finish what had been started so many years ago. She picked up one of the old invitations and smiled. It was time for Moon Valley Manor to have its Halloween party, even if it was 135 years late. The rain outside grew stronger, and somewhere in the house, a clock started ticking. Hei-yun felt like her story was just beginning, and for the first time in years, she couldn't wait to see what would happen next. The morning after discovering the old invitations, Hei-yun called her best friend Mireille. Within an hour, Mireille arrived at Moon Valley Manor, carrying hot coffee and fresh pastries. Her eyes grew wide as she walked through the front door. "This place is amazing," Mireille said, turning in a slow circle to look at everything. "But it needs a lot of work." Hei-yun nodded. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, showing all the things that needed fixing. The wallpaper was peeling in places, and some floorboards creaked loudly when they walked on them. "I want to host a Halloween party here," Hei-yun said, showing Mireille the old invitations, just like the one that never happened in 1889. Mireille, who planned parties for a living, immediately got excited. She pulled out her notebook and started making lists. As they talked about their plans, they heard someone knocking at the front door. It was a young man with kind eyes and a tool belt around his waist. "I'm Du-yoon," he said with a friendly smile. "I live next door and take care of the old houses in this area. I noticed your car and wanted to see if you need any help." Hae-yeon explained her plans for the Halloween party. Du-yoon's face lit up. "I know all about this house's history," he said. "I'd love to help restore it." As they walked through the house together, Du-yoon pointed out things they could fix. The wooden banisters needed polishing, some windows needed new glass, and the garden needed a lot of work. But he said the house was still strong and beautiful. Suddenly, they heard footsteps upstairs. "That must be Yoo-jin," Du-yoon said. "She's been the housekeeper here for 40 years. Your grandmother gave her a key to check on things." Soon, an elderly woman came down the stairs. She smiled warmly when she saw Hae-yeon. "I've been waiting for you," Yoo-jin said. "The house has been waiting too." Yoo-jin had kept the house from falling apart all these years. She had cleaned when she could and made sure the pipes didn't freeze in winter. She even put fresh flowers in the library every week, just like Hae-yeon's grandmother used to do. As they sat in the kitchen drinking tea, Yoo-jin told them stories about the house. She talked about parties that happened there long ago, about the gardens that used to win prizes, and about the way the house seemed to take care of itself sometimes. "Things get fixed when no one's looking," Yoo-jin said with a mysterious smile. "Doors that squeaked yesterday don't squeak today. Flowers bloom even when no one waters them." Hae-yeon looked at her new friends. May-rae was still making lists. Du-yoon was measuring a window that needed fixing, and Yoo-jin was making more tea. The kitchen felt warm and friendly, even though the rain had started again outside. "We have 1 month until Halloween," Hae-yeon said. "Can we do it?" "With all of us working together, we can," Du-yoon said. "I'll start on the repairs tomorrow." "I'll plan the perfect Victorian Halloween party," May-rae added. "We'll need costumes, decorations, and food from that time. And I'll teach you all the secrets of this house," Yoo-jin said softly. "There are many good things to know." As they made their plans, the rain grew stronger outside. But inside Moon Valley Manor, everything felt right. The old house seemed to come alive with their voices and laughter. Even the creaky floors and dusty corners didn't seem so bad anymore. That night, after everyone left, Hae-yeon stood in the entrance hall. She could almost see how beautiful everything would look on Halloween night. And somewhere in the house, she heard that clock ticking again, counting down the days to their special celebration. The work on Moon Valley Manor began early the next morning. Du-yoon arrived with his tools, May-rae brought cleaning supplies, and Yoo-jin made breakfast for everyone in the old kitchen. As they cleaned and fixed things, they found many surprises. Behind a loose panel in the library, Hae-yeon discovered a small door. Du-yoon helped her open it, revealing the hidden room. Inside, they found old books, letters, and a beautiful music box covered in mother-of-pearl. "This belonged to the first owner of the house," Yoo-jin explained, carefully opening the music box. Sweet music filled the air, and Hae-yeon noticed that it was the same tune she sometimes heard playing in the house when no one was around. That afternoon, a knock at the door brought someone new. A tall man with glasses introduced himself as Jin-woo, a local historian. "I heard you were restoring the manor," he said. "I studied this house for years. May I help?" Jin-woo brought old photographs of the manor from the 1880s. They showed how the house looked when it was first built, with its beautiful gardens and elegant rooms. In one photo, people in Victorian clothes stood on the front steps, smiling at the camera. "These will help us make everything perfect for the Halloween party," May-rae said, studying the pictures carefully. As they worked, strange things kept happening. Tools that Du-yoon needed would appear right where he was working, even though he hadn't brought them there. Rooms that were dusty in the morning would be clean by afternoon, even though no one had cleaned them. The garden was the biggest surprise. While Hei-yun and Do-yoon cleared the overgrown paths, they found that many of the old flowers were still growing. Roses bloomed even though it was October, and the grass seemed to trim itself in places they hadn't reached yet. "The house is helping us," Yoo-jin said simply when Hei-yun mentioned these strange events. "It knows what we're trying to do." Jin-woo found more information about the cancelled Halloween party from 1889. The original owner was Lady Kim, he explained. She spent months planning the party, but a great storm prevented everyone from coming. She never tried to have another party after that. Hei-yun felt sad for Lady Kim, but then something wonderful happened. While cleaning the attic, they found a large trunk full of Victorian Halloween decorations. There were paper lanterns, silk ribbons, and even party games from that time. "These must be from the original party," Jin-woo said excitedly. "They've been waiting up here for over 100 years." The rain continued to fall outside, making the days feel cozy and mysterious. As they worked, the group grew closer. Do-yoon taught Hei-yun how to fix simple things around the house. Mei-rei showed everyone how to dance like Victorians. Jin-woo shared interesting stories about the house's history, and Yoo-jin made sure everyone took breaks to eat and rest. One evening, as the sun was setting, they all stood in the grand hall. The chandelier sparkled. Do-yoon had cleaned it that morning. The wooden floors shone, and the wallpaper looked fresh and bright where they had restored it. "Lady Kim would be happy," Yoo-jin said softly. "The house is waking up again." As if to agree, the old music box in the hidden room began to play by itself. But this time, no one was surprised. They were getting used to the gentle magic of Moon Valley Manor, and it felt right. That night, Hei-yun looked out her window at the rainy garden. The house didn't feel lonely anymore. It was filling up with friendship, hard work, and plans for a very special celebration. 2 weeks before Halloween, Moon Valley Manor was becoming more beautiful each day. The autumn rain continued to fall softly outside, but inside, wonderful transformations were taking place. In the grand ballroom, Do-yoon had restored the wooden floors to their original shine. The warm afternoon light made the wood glow like honey. Mei-rei supervised as they hung crystal decorations from the ceiling, each one catching the light and creating tiny rainbows on the walls. Hei-yun spent her mornings in the kitchen with Yoo-jin, learning to make traditional Victorian recipes. They found an old cookbook in the hidden room, its pages yellow with age, but still readable. The kitchen filled with delicious smells as they practiced making spiced cider, plum puddings, and small cakes decorated with candied flowers. "These are the same recipes Lady Kim would have used for her party," Jin-woo explained as he carefully turned the cookbook's fragile pages. He had brought more historical documents showing what Victorian Halloween parties were like. There would be games, music, and dancing, just as people enjoyed in 1889. The invitations Mei-rei designed looked perfect. She had copied the style of the original ones they found, but made them new and special. Each invitation was written in golden ink and sealed with dark red wax, just like in Victorian times. Do-yoon made an important discovery while fixing the large mirror in the entrance hall. Behind it, he found a small shelf holding a collection of Victorian party masks. Each mask was carefully made of silk and decorated with feathers and tiny gems. They were still beautiful after all these years. "These must have been waiting for the original party guests," Hei-yun said softly, holding one of the delicate masks. The group decided to display them in the entrance hall for their party guests to admire. Yoo-jin showed them how to make the house smell wonderful using dried flowers and spices, just as Victorian housekeepers did. They placed small sachets filled with lavender and rosemary in every room. The scents mixed with the smell of polish and fresh paint in a pleasant way. The garden was changing too. Despite the constant rain, the paths were now clear and neat. Old stone benches appeared from under the ivy, and the rose bushes continued to bloom as if it were still summer. String lights were carefully hung in the trees, ready to light up the garden on Halloween night. Jinwoo worked on the music selection, finding recordings of Victorian dance music. The old piano in the corner of the ballroom was tuned, and to everyone's surprise, it stayed perfectly in tune, even though no one had played it for years. One evening, as they finished their work for the day, something magical happened. The chandelier in the ballroom lit up by itself, filling the room with soft light. The group stood quietly, watching the light dance on the polished floor. "The house is practicing for the party," Yoo-jin said with a knowing smile. No one disagreed. Hae-yeon looked around at her friends. Mireille was arranging flowers in crystal vases. Do-yoon was carefully hanging the last of the decorations. Jinwoo was organizing his historical documents, and Yoo-jin was bringing in fresh tea for everyone. The house felt alive with happiness and preparation. Even the rain outside seemed to be playing its part, creating a cozy atmosphere that made everyone want to stay inside and work together. That night, when everyone had gone home, Hae-yeon walked through the quiet rooms. Everything was almost ready. She could almost see how it would all look on Halloween night, filled with guests in Victorian costumes, dancing and celebrating in the soft light. The week before Halloween brought peculiar events to Moon Valley Manor. The constant autumn rain created a peaceful backdrop as mysterious happenings unfolded within the house's walls. One morning, Hae-yeon arrived to find all the mirrors in the house had been cleaned to perfection, though no one had touched them. The glass surfaces gleamed so brightly that they seemed to hold tiny stars within them. When she asked Yoo-jin about this, the elderly housekeeper simply smiled and continued arranging flowers. Do-yoon discovered that the tools he left in one room would appear in another room where he needed them next. "It's as if the house knows what I'm planning to fix," he said, examining a hammer that had moved itself from the library to the conservatory overnight. Mireille experienced something remarkable while preparing the party decorations. She had run out of red ribbon while creating Victorian-style paper ornaments. Upon opening a drawer she had checked earlier, she found exactly the ribbon she needed, in precisely the right shade of deep crimson. Jinwoo's historical documents began revealing new information. Pages would fall open to exactly the details they needed about Victorian celebrations. One afternoon, an old diary appeared on his research table, though no one remembered bringing it there. The diary contained detailed descriptions of Halloween parties from the 1880s. The garden continued its unusual behavior. Despite the constant rain, the paths remained mysteriously clear of wet leaves. The roses bloomed more abundantly than ever, their petals perfect and dry even in the rain. Small lanterns along the garden paths would light up at dusk, though they had no power source. In the kitchen, Yoo-jin and Hae-yeon noticed that ingredients would organize themselves overnight. Spices appeared in alphabetical order, and measuring cups stacked themselves neatly. The old recipe book would often open to pages featuring the exact dishes they had planned to prepare the next day. The most remarkable events happened in the ballroom. The chandelier began to light up every evening at precisely 6 o'clock, though no one had connected it to electricity. The old piano would play soft melodies late at night, its notes drifting through the empty halls. When they checked, the piano bench was always warm, as if someone had just finished playing. One afternoon, Hae-yeon found Do-yoon standing perfectly still in the entrance hall. "Listen," he whispered. The sound of gentle laughter and conversation echoed from empty rooms, as if a gathering were taking place. But when they went to look, the rooms were vacant, though they felt warm and welcoming. Mireille started keeping a journal of these occurrences. "Everything that happens makes the house feel more prepared for the party," she observed. "It's like the house is helping us create the celebration it missed so long ago." Jinwoo's research provided a possible explanation. According to these records, he said, showing them an old newspaper, Lady Kim continued living here for many years after the canceled party. She never stopped hoping to host her Halloween celebration one day. Yoo-jin nodded at this information. "The house remembers," she said simply. "It has been waiting all these years to welcome guests again." As Halloween approached, these mysterious events increased. but they never felt frightening. Instead, they filled the house with a sense of joyful anticipation. Each unexplained occurrence seemed to make Moon Valley Manor more beautiful and more ready for the upcoming celebration. In the evenings, when Hei-yun was alone in the house, she would sometimes hear the soft rustle of silk skirts on the stairs or catch the faint scent of old-fashioned perfume in the air. These moments made her smile, knowing that even the past residents of Moon Valley Manor were helping to prepare for the long-awaited Halloween party. Halloween evening arrived with perfect autumn weather. The rain fell softly, creating a gentle sound on Moon Valley Manor's windows. Inside, everything was ready for the grand celebration. Hei-yun stood in the entrance hall, wearing a Victorian-style dress that Mai-Rei had found in the attic. The dress fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Its deep blue silk rustled when she moved, and small pearls decorated the collar. Do-yoon arrived early, dressed as a Victorian gentleman in a perfectly tailored black coat. He helped light all the candles in their silver holders. The flames created warm, dancing shadows on the walls. The chandeliers above sparkled with a soft, golden light. Mai-Rei appeared wearing a beautiful green dress with lace trim. She carried the final decorations, small bouquets of roses that had bloomed that morning in the rain-soaked garden. Somehow, the flowers looked fresh and perfect despite the weather. Jin-woo came dressed in a historical costume he had carefully researched. He brought his camera to document the evening, though he mentioned that cameras sometimes captured interesting things in old houses like this one. Yoo-jin wore a housekeeper's dress from the Victorian era, looking as if she had stepped out of one of the old photographs. She moved through the rooms, making sure everything was perfect. The house seemed to glow under her attention. At exactly 7 o'clock, the first guests arrived. They gasped in wonder as they entered the manor. The entrance hall welcomed them with soft light and the gentle music of the old music box. Each guest received one of the Victorian masks found behind the mirror. The ballroom looked magnificent. Candlelight reflected in the mirrors and crystal decorations, creating a magical atmosphere. The old piano began to play by itself, filling the room with beautiful music. Strangely, none of the guests seemed surprised by this. In the dining room, the long table held dishes made from Lady Kim's old recipes. The spiced cider steamed in crystal glasses, and small cakes decorated with candied flowers looked too beautiful to eat. Yet every time a plate emptied, it seemed to refill itself. The garden had transformed into an enchanted space. Despite the rain, the paths stayed dry, and the lights in the trees glowed like stars. Guests wandered through the garden, their Victorian costumes making them look like figures from the past. Something remarkable happened as the evening continued. The rain created a misty curtain around the manor, and through this curtain, guests sometimes caught glimpses of other partygoers who seemed to be from another time. These figures smiled and nodded at the modern guests before disappearing into the mist. The old music box played throughout the house, its tune mixing with the piano music and the sound of rain. The mirrors seemed to show more than just reflections. Sometimes they revealed scenes from the past, as if two parties were happening at once. Hei-yun watched her guests enjoying themselves. Do-yoon stood beside her, and they both smiled as they saw Mai-Rei teaching everyone Victorian dances. Jin-woo moved through the crowd, taking photographs and sharing historical facts about the house. Yoo-jin appeared next to Hei-yun. "The house is happy," she said softly. "Listen." In that moment, Hei-yun heard it. Beneath the music, the rain, and the happy voices of her guests, the house itself seemed to be humming with joy. The long wait was over. Moon Valley Manor was finally having its Halloween party. At midnight, something extraordinary happened at Moon Valley Manor. The rain outside grew softer, creating a silvery curtain around the house. Inside, the candlelight flickered in a particular way, and the music from the piano became clearer than ever. Hei-yun stood in the center of the ballroom, watching her guests dance. Do-yoon was teaching an elderly couple a Victorian waltz, while Mai-Rei arranged refreshments on a nearby table. Jinwoo had positioned himself near a large mirror, his camera ready to capture any special moments. Suddenly, Yu Jin appeared at Hae-yun's side. "Look carefully now," she whispered. "The past and present are about to meet." The crystal chandelier's light grew warmer, filling the room with a golden glow. Through the rain-streaked windows, shadows began to move in an unusual way. The mirrors on the walls seemed to deepen, as if they were windows into another time. Then it happened. As the old music box played its sweetest tune, the room filled with new figures. They appeared like gentle mist taking shape, ladies in elaborate Victorian dresses and gentlemen in formal suits. These figures moved among the present-day guests, dancing to the same music. Hae-yun recognized one particular figure, a woman in a purple silk dress with a kind smile. She matched exactly the photograph Jinwoo had found of Lady Kim, the original owner of Moon Valley Manor. Lady Kim moved through the crowd, nodding approvingly at the decorations. The present-day guests didn't seem alarmed by these new arrivals. Instead, they smiled and bowed to their Victorian counterparts. Some even joined in dances together, their different styles of dress creating a beautiful blend of past and present. In the dining room, both modern and Victorian guests shared Lady Kim's recipes. The spice cider steamed in everyone's cups, and the small cakes disappeared just as quickly as they appeared. Conversations flowed between the two times as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Do-yoon found himself dancing with a young Victorian lady who complimented him on his restoration work. Mei-rei exchanged party planning tips with a group of Victorian hostesses. Jinwoo's camera captured impossible images, photographs that showed both times existing together in perfect harmony. The garden had become a magical space where the rain never fell, though they could still hear it. Victorian couples walked arm in arm with present-day guests along the lamplit paths. The roses seemed to glow from within, and music drifted through the air from no visible source. Lady Kim finally approached Hae-yun. Though she didn't speak, her smile said everything. She reached out and touched Hae-yun's hand gently. In that moment, Hae-yun understood. This was the party that had waited 135 years to happen. Past and present had come together to make it perfect. Yu Jin moved quietly through both groups of guests, serving refreshments and sharing secret smiles. She seemed completely at ease with this magical mixing of times, as if she had always known it would happen. As the grandfather clock struck 1, the Victorian guests began to fade like morning mist. They bowed and curtsied to their present-day companions. Lady Kim was the last to disappear, giving Hae-yun one final, grateful smile before she too faded away. The rain continued its gentle pattern, and the candles burned steadily. The present-day guests looked at each other with wonder in their eyes, knowing they had been part of something extraordinary. The old music box played one final note, and then the room fell into a peaceful silence. The morning after the Halloween party, Hae-yun woke to find Moon Valley Manor peaceful and quiet. Sunlight streamed through the windows for the first time in weeks, making the polished floors glow. The rain had finally stopped. In the ballroom, everything was perfectly clean, though no one had tidied up after the party. The candles stood fresh and unburned in their holders. Crystal glasses sparkled on shelves, and the piano keys gleamed as if waiting for the next song. Do-yoon arrived early, carrying fresh bread and coffee. He found Hae-yun in the library, looking through Jinwoo's photographs from the night before. The pictures showed something remarkable. In each image, there were faint outlines of Victorian guests dancing alongside the modern partygoers. Mei-rei joined them soon after, bringing a stack of thank-you notes from the guests. Everyone had written about how special the evening had been. Many described dancing with partners they couldn't quite remember, and hearing conversations in voices that seemed to come from long ago. Jinwoo appeared with more historical documents. He had discovered something interesting. In the town records, there was now a mention of 2 Halloween parties at Moon Valley Manor, one in 1889 and one in 2024. Somehow, Both parties had happened, separated by 135 years, but connected by magic. Yu Jin prepared tea in the kitchen, using Lady Kim's favorite teapot. As they gathered around the kitchen table, she told them that the house felt different now. "It's not waiting anymore," she said. "Now it's planning for the future." The changes in Moon Valley Manor were subtle but clear. The rooms felt warmer and more alive. The mirrors seemed to hold tiny sparkles of light, even in shadow. The old music box played soft tunes every now and then, as if remembering happy dances. Hei-yun made an important decision that morning. She would live in Moon Valley Manor permanently, carrying on its tradition of welcoming guests and hosting celebrations. Do-yoon offered to continue helping with the house's care, his eyes showing that he had reasons beyond just fixing old windows. Mei-rei began planning more events for the manor. Victorian Christmas parties, spring garden celebrations, summer evening dances, she said excitedly. Jinwoo promised to research the history of each traditional celebration to make them authentic. Yu Jin agreed to stay on as housekeeper, though everyone knew she was much more than that. She was the keeper of the manor's secrets, the one who understood its magic best. Her presence made the house feel complete. Throughout the following year, Moon Valley Manor became known as a place where wonderful things happened. Guests often spoke about feeling as if they had stepped into another time. Sometimes, during parties, people caught glimpses of Victorian ladies and gentlemen in the mirrors, smiling and nodding in approval. The garden bloomed more beautifully than ever before. The roses never seemed to fade, and the paths always looked perfectly kept. On quiet evenings, the sound of piano music drifted through the house, and sometimes, very faintly, people could hear the happy voices of parties from long ago. Hei-yun understood now why her grandmother had left her the manor. It wasn't just a house. It was a place where magic and reality danced together, where the past and present could meet, and where every celebration became something extraordinary. As another Halloween approached, Hei-yun began planning the next party. The old music box played softly in the background, and somewhere in the house, a clock ticked steadily, counting down to new celebrations and more magical moments at Moon Valley Manor.